What we have here is the evolution of the air conditioning compressor used in a car. If you would remember everything back till basically the very beginning, they had a clutch on the front and the compressor was basically just on or off. And when it was off, well, the pulley just freewheeled, and the only concern would be eventual failure of the pulley bearing, causing you some headaches, but that's kind of unusual from what I've seen. So this is the latest style that has no clutch whatsoever. It is permanently driven by the engine belt, and the way it operates is via variable displacement, and that variable displacement is operated via PWM, and I believe that's the device at the back there that is actually doing the actuation of the internals to alter the displacement. This is a junk unit. It has seized up completely. As is the risk with these systems, if you're driving a car that has one of these compressors and you've got an air conditioning system that leaks, and you've had these jokers come out that do driveway refills and not check the level of the oil in the system, as is the case with this one. There was absolutely no oil in this system, and even with the compressor not even running, it seized, snapped the belt, and the car had to be towed home, 4 hours away from home. So that's kind of a crap thing to happen when you're not even using the air conditioner, for an abused system that has no oil in it to still potentially seize and leave you stranded. I'm going to take this piece of shit apart now, and we'll see what it looks like inside. This is not from any of my cars. I don't have anything from this era. This is like 2000s-ish onwards. Hopefully I can take it apart. Let's give it a go. So out of interest, it does still have, well, of course it does, a pulley bearing, but the coupling that actually drives the compressor basically just locks it to that pulley anyway, and it's got this kind of thick mylar material that acts as some kind of damper between that coupling and the pulley. There might be rubber in there. I don't think so. It feels like metal. The rest of the disassembly looks fairly similar to another compressor. It's got some snap rings at the front there, and presumably that pulley pulls off, and then there's, I see, these screws around the perimeter. I'll go ahead and get that off. So I've got the rear cover off, which actually contains what appears to be a spool valve operated by that actuator. And that would have a variable amount of travel, I guess, kind of like an idle slide valve would work on the older Benzes. And that's PWM controlled. So effectively, the higher amount of current applied, the more it will move in a certain direction. And it looks like it's in a fully closed position at the rest state. That's the valve plate at the back that basically operates as a one-way valve on each of these 7 cylinders. And you can see these streaks where it's well and truly seized. So these are the top bores. Obviously, they've run dry with no oil, and you can see they're all streaked. They're screwed. The lower ones, well, there was a little bit of oil left in the system, obviously, so they're sufficiently wet, but the upper cylinders completely dry. Same thing happens to your car engine if you drive around with no oil in it or overheat it. Yeah, this thing's completely screwed. I don't know that I'm going to be able to disassemble it any further because it's absolutely locked up rock solid. As far as I'm aware, the way they achieve the variable displacement is via altering the angle of like a triangular plate that's rotating about the shaft there that operates the pistons in and out. When it's completely flat, it's in the 0 position, so there's no compression happening at all. The pistons are all staying stationary. And when it goes on an angle, well, then they start going up and down in a circular motion as it rotates. There are videos demonstrating how these PWM compressors work. I would assume this Benz one is the same. I will try to disassemble it some more. If not, if I can't, well, this will be the end of the video. I'll continue anyway off camera. We'll see what happens. This may be the end of the video. If not, I will see you shortly. So I've got it fully disassembled now, and every single one of these pistons and bores is completely screwed. They all required beating out of their bores to actually come out. So that is a catastrophic failure. So this is the plate I was talking about. It's not actually a triangle like I thought it might be. But then again, this probably has more cylinders than the demonstration unit on eBay. Not eBay, the internet, I should say. And it appears that even in the zero position, there is still a slight amount of displacement. And if you're wondering how the hell that works, you see the pistons are in the bores and they're hooked on top of that disc that rotates. There's spaces as well that have all fallen out to take up the gap, but this disc can have its angle changed. That's how the variable displacement works. So that's the off mode, where there's nearly no displacement. Presumably it still needs some refrigerant flow to actually operate this, and that's why that doesn't turn off completely. Because there's nothing that's actually moving this. Presumably it's refrigerant that's doing it via that actuator. So even more reason that you cannot run these compressors with no oil in it, because you're going to end up with a broken down car unless you just leave the belt disconnected off it and bypass it. So air conditioning is pretty much mandatory to be operational on these later cars with the variable displacement compressors. Just one more reason I'm not interested in owning one of them. Not that I have a problem with air conditioners, all of mine work perfectly because I rebuilt them, but stuff like this just annoys the hell out of me. This design is for efficiency purposes. It's about saving fuel. So the compressor's load on the engine can be very finely controlled, from almost nothing at all to quite a lot on a hot summer's day, by altering the angle of this disc. It alters the travel of those pistons going in and out. Quite different to our old clutch-driven compressors, I must say. Now, fortunately, all of this crap can go in the bin and I can wash my hands, because there's like fine metallic paste that is through all of this from the constant grinding of metal on metal that has resulted in a broken down car. So once again, you have been warned. Don't drive around a later Benz with a variable displacement compressor with no oil in the compressor, because you will break down at some stage.